Well, the first question has to be, Greg, how's your car park office doing? Because I hear it's quite warm down there.
It is quite warm. It's a hive of activity, and the fact that it has no windows and no obvious ventilation is doing nothing to dim the spirits of the team, who are doing great stuff down there.
And air conditioning is obviously contributing to lowering your carbon emissions as well.
I think a kind observation would be that this is a sort of a passive house technology in practice.
Absolutely. Well, this is your, as you were saying, this is your second COP. You were in Cancun as well. What are your general thoughts about it for the first few days you've been here? I mean, what have your negotiation team been briefing you on?
Well, I arrived yesterday. It's got a different feel to Cancun. I mean, you've got to remember that Cancun really was overshadowed for the first part of the negotiations by Copenhagen the year before. And obviously, having come away from Cancun into Durban, we're in a better place than that. We're not looking to sort of rescue it from a car crash. We're looking to build on Cancun rather than rescue the whole process. But we have the potential here to do something quite special. I think we're realistic about what we can achieve, and I think realism is a good thing in negotiations. But there's still a high level of ambition that is absolutely necessary if we're going to come up with any sort of solution that is compatible with the science on climate change, and the science is telling us all the time we need more action. So I am still hopeful, but there's a long way to go, that we could come out of this COP with a commitment to get on a track to a comprehensive legal agreement, which is where the world needs to be if we're ultimately going to do something about averting the very worst effects of dangerous man-made climate change.
Can a comprehensive legal agreement work, though, if it only has half of the world's countries signed up to it?
That's not a comprehensive legal agreement. When I say comprehensive, I mean comprehensive. And that is what we need. We cannot hope to beat dangerous climate change if only some of the world's major emitters are involved. We're looking at the need for a comprehensive treaty that acknowledges common but differentiated responsibilities between developed and developing countries. But nevertheless, it needs to be comprehensive. We need to end up in a place where all the nations of the world are on the same page.
And from what you've seen so far, from what your team have told you, is that looking anywhere like coming to fruition in Durban?
Well, I think it's looking more likely than at any time in the recent past. I think we are starting to see some movement, but I don't want to kid you, we're not there yet. And it really remains to be seen whether or not we can get onto that track here in Durban. But that's what we need to do, and that's what the UK is pushing for.
The UK has always taken a lead in these climate negotiations ever since Lord Prescott back in 1997 and the signing of the Kyoto Protocol. Is there anything that the UK can do in terms of perhaps the so-called special relationship with the USA or other measures to leverage some of these countries who seem unwilling to sign up to an agreement?
Well, I think the best thing that the UK can do is really lead by example. And David Cameron, when he formed the new coalition in the UK last year, gave a clear commitment that at home we would be the greenest government ever. And we are putting in a range of policies to deliver on our commitment to reduce UK carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. And we've got a very tough series of carbon budgets to get there that we are putting in place. But we don't just want to be the greenest government at home, we also want to extend that abroad. Which is why, despite the really tough budget situation we have at home in the UK, tackling an enormous deficit that we're determined to bring down, despite that, we've been able to find £2.9 billion for the UK's International Climate Fund, which we're dedicating to fast-track finance. But our commitment on finance actually goes beyond the fast-track finance period. I think actually we are the leading developed country in terms of the timeline that we're prepared to go out to in our financing, and that's a real sign of our commitment to this agenda to the long term. But the UK on its own isn't enough, clearly.
Let's just talk about the fast-track finance or fast-start finance in a moment. Just going back to what you said about the budget, many have said that the Chancellor's recent comments in the UK were were perhaps not the greenest we've ever seen from a chancellor. How would you react to that? And is the UK, despite what you've said and what Chris Huhne's been saying, is the UK domestically showing the leadership that is required in this situation?
Absolutely. If you look what we've done in the UK, the Chancellor's really put his money where his mouth is. In fact, maybe he's put more money than where his mouth is. £3 billion for Europe's first green investment bank. We've got a commitment to a floor price for carbon. We're bringing in an emissions performance standard to ensure that there can be no new coal-fired power stations built without carbon capture and storage. And on carbon capture and storage, we've got £1 billion committed to the world's largest industrial CCS program. We have an incredibly ambitious program to roll out offshore wind to make us the Saudi Arabia of global offshore wind. We have a whole range of programs, and we're actually taking energy efficiency seriously for the first time. Not just with the creation of the most ambitious retrofit program since World War II, but actually government itself. Last year we said within a year of coming into government we'd cut the British government's own emissions by 10% in 12 months. Not only did we do that, we managed to cut our own emissions by 13.5% and have now committed to go on and cut them by 25% within this Parliament. So across a whole range of different policy levers, we're acting very ambitiously, but we want to now push that onto an international platform.
And how hard is it? Many diplomats, delegates, negotiators have been telling us in the last week how hard it is to come, particularly when you look at the Green Climate Fund, the current Eurozone crisis, the current economic crisis around the world. How is it for politicians in the EU, in the UK, around the world to actually make these firm pledges when you're not really sure how the economic situation is going to pan out?
Well, we have made a firm pledge in the UK, £2.9 billion for international climate finance over the spending review, which takes us up to 2014. So that is part of our spending review, which is part of our deficit reduction strategy. We've made a very clear commitment to spending on international development, and as part of that, our climate finance as well. So for us it's key, and it's part of the solution. Any recovery, any growth has to be sustainable, and it can't just be seen in domestic terms. We have to see the globe on a path to sustainable development.
Tell us a bit about the Fast Start Finance then, because that is something the UK has announced today, something I think you're quite keen to showcase.
Absolutely. Well, today we got to the point where over 2/3 of our Fast Start Finance is now committed, and there's a whole range of projects which are either delivered or that now have money firmly committed to them, like £150 million for urban transport in Nigeria, like a trans-border water program in South America. There are a whole range of large and small programs that are benefiting from UK investment, and what we want to do is, wherever possible, use that public sector funding to attract in more private sector funding behind it. And I think that's where we can really help pioneer a new model of climate finance, where we catalyse not just public sector money, but private sector investment as well on the back of it, which will further help create wealth in developing economies.
And in terms of the Green Climate Funds, are you firmly of the opinion that private sector finance is important, particularly for that fund moving forward?
Private sector finance is an invaluable, essential component of climate solutions. Without it, we simply won't get there. We won't be able to mobilise the money required. But it shouldn't be seen as an alternative to public sector finance. We have a obligation in the developed economies to support climate projects in the areas particularly where private finance will never actually reach. And we have to be clear, I'm a great advocate of the benefits of private finance, but there are some projects, some places where that will never actually reach, and we have to be clear that there is a public sector alternative. So private finance is additional to the public finance obligation that developed countries have.
Okay, two more questions. I guess the first one is, as a senior politician over here representing the UK, how much responsibility do you feel, for everyone's, children's children and grandchildren moving forward? Because the IEA recent report said we have, 5 years to stop dangerous climate change. How much responsibility do you feel on your shoulders in those negotiation chambers?
Huge responsibility to try and galvanise the EU. That's why we're pushing for a greater level of ambition within the EU, but also to make sure that we do everything we can, deploy all the arguments, use our assets, use our money to push the world not only just to taking climate change seriously, but to actually adopting a solution. And ultimately, the only thing that we have that looks like a real long-term solution that's up to the scale of the challenge is a global agreement, and that's what we've got to keep pushing for and mustn't lose sight of, despite the other practical things that we can do as well.
Okay, and what's your bar for success? What's your height for what could be a successful COP?
Well, I think we have to be clear that ultimately success must be to go away from this COP with a clear track towards negotiating a binding legal treaty that that will cover the whole world. We're not going to do that here, but I think we do want it by 2015 and implemented as soon thereafter. We've got to get back on track.
Do you have any timeline for that in terms of if we're not going to do it here, are we looking at what, 2015 or?
Yeah, 2015 I think is the latest that we'd really want to see that treaty negotiated by and implemented as soon as thereafter as is possible. We've got to do that if we're going to respond in the way that the science tells us we need to.
And just in terms of the Cancun agreements, do you see any sort of bright light in terms of the Green Climate Fund? Do you think that's an achievable policy this week?
Well, I think we can do a lot on the Green Climate Fund. We need to do a lot on the Green Climate Fund. And I hope that when we come back to the COP next year, we'll be in a position to actually launch it with real cash. But before we can put the money in, we've got to get the governance and the structures right to make sure it's a really effective institution.